Hey everyone. We finished chapter 18, Proverbs chapter 18. So we're starting Proverbs chapter 19 here. It reads, Better is the poor that walketh in his integrity than he that is perverse in his lips and is a fool. Also that the soul be without knowledge, it is not good, and he that hasteth with his feet sinneth. The foolishness of man perverteth his way, and his heart fretteth against the Lord. Wealth maketh many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. It's odd that that's the case, you know? We see so many scriptures that talk about the importance of integrity and righteousness versus money. And then this is saying that money makes many friends, and that's something that we see in life. I don't know why there's this behavior within humanity where we kind of are repulsed by the poor, and drawn towards the wealthy. And it's often the wealthy that are steeped in wickedness, and the poor that are humble and contrite, but for some reason people are just drawn towards the wealthy. And then another thing too here, it says wealth maketh many friends, but usually those friends are insincere friends. Like you hear about the rich, how they have to be very careful. They don't really have any real friends. People are just with them for their riches. I was just hearing a famous celebrity talk about how those that are closest to her, steal from her. And you hear about that a lot with the wealthy, about just being unable to trust those around them. So while wealth makes many friends, are they real friends? Are they sincere friends? And I suppose you hear about that with people who hit the lotto as well. You always hear these stories about all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork saying, hey, I'm your distant cousin and blah, blah, blah. Everybody wants to be close to him then. But not for real reasons. It's for what that person can do for them. It's unfortunate. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall not escape. Many will entreat the favor of the prince, and every man is a friend to him that giveth gifts. So again, we see this behavior within humanity of being drawn towards people who give you gifts, or being drawn towards money, but it seems like it's an insincere friendship. So I suppose we should ask, what's the Christian response to this wisdom? And I suppose the answer is, we should be friendly to all. We shouldn't show preference. We shouldn't show favoritism towards those of wealth. And I don't think the born again do, but anyways, verse 7, all the brethren of the poor do hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? He pursueth them with words, yet they are wanting to him. So again, it's that idea of for some reason there's that natural inclination to be repulsed by the poor, and it's kind of heartbreaking because those are the people who need friends. So being aware of that condition, Christians ought to make an effort to resist that temptation that rises up, that fleshly natural disposition to separate from poor. I think about the homeless. It's almost like you're worried they seem dirty or gross, and so you hold them at arm's distance. But that's a wickedness. It's a wickedness that exists in our nature, to separate from the poor. And again, they're the ones who need friendship the most. Verse 8, he that getteth wisdom loveth his own soul. He that keepeth understanding shall find good. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall perish. So there's some hope for justice. Like, a false witness will not be unpunished. Like, one of the biggest grievances, or is that the right word I'm looking for? One of the biggest sorrows or frustrations in my life right now is looking at the political atmosphere and seeing so many wicked people seemingly going unpunished. Our media is full of lies. Our politicians are full of lies. Celebrities are full of lies. And it's like, man, they just keep getting away with this stuff. Like, where's the justice? And it's so frustrating to see. And this is telling us that a false witness will not be unpunished. Like there is going to come a time where these people have to give an account. God is just. He's slow to wrath. And so often when we look at a situation, we're thinking, why is this happening? Why is there no justice? Why the delay? But God is patient, and his wrath burns slow. But there is coming a point in time where everybody's going to have to give an account. And these wicked people that continually promote lies, they're going to have to answer for that. They're going to be held accountable. There will be justice. I think there's a verse that says, surely the King of the universe will do righteously, will do justice. It's, that is, righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne, it says in Psalm 89. So the justice and righteousness are the characteristics of God, foundational characteristics. He will uphold justice. He will do righteously. Wicked people will not get away with their wickedness. And so we have to trust in that, even though there seems to be a delay, even though there seems to be a time period where the wicked prosper. I think Psalms 37 or one of the Psalms, it might not be Psalm 37, but David talks about that, how he saw the wicked prospering and how it grieved him and he was upset. And then he goes to the house of God and he remembers that their time is short, that God has set them on slippery slopes, that they will fall. And that's the overall theme of the scriptures. The meek will inherit the earth. The humble will be lifted up. Those who do right will prosper. And so while we look at the world from a temporal standpoint, it seems like wickedness is prospering. It seems like the unrighteous are getting away with their wickedness. And it's incredibly frustrating when you look at it, especially like if we're paying close attention to the news, because you're seeing it every day. You're seeing the same liars. You're seeing the same wickedness, and just no justice, nobody getting arrested, nobody being punished for these crimes. But God is just, and God will do righteously. They will give an account. There will be a time of reckoning. And so we can rest our hope in that. We can rejoice in that. We can trust God in that. We can continue to do righteousness. We can continue to walk in humility and love. And if for a time it seems like we're being used and abused and taken advantage of, we can trust in the Lord in that. We can trust that ultimately he's going to do what's right and he's going to hold people accountable. And so that we can place our hope in that verse 9 here, a false witness shall not be unpunished. So anyways, I think that's where I'll stop here today. Lord willing, we'll pick up in verse 10 next time. All right, I love you guys. We'll talk to you later. Hey, everybody. We're continuing on in Proverbs Chapter 19. We read through verse 9. So we're going to pick up in verse 10 here. It says, "Delight is not seemly for a fool, much less for a servant to have rule over princes. The discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression." It's an interesting verse. Like, I've thought about this one quite a bit. When somebody wrongs you, it says it's your glory to pass over a transgression. So, like, what is glory? It makes you think of, like, the radiance of goodness, the radiance of your character. So like if you pass over a transgression, if somebody wrongs you and you just let it go, you forget about it. It says that that's a glorious thing. It's your glory. It shows forth mercy. It's Christ-like character to forgive. And so you would think that we would desire that. But so often, even when we know we have to forgive, like the scriptures tell us, if we don't forgive, we won't be forgiven. If you hold a grudge, if you hold some sort of wrong against somebody, your wrongs are going to be held against you. You've done worse. That's that parable about the king who forgave the servant much, and then that servant turns around and refuses to forgive his fellow servant who owes him just a little. The king is furious at that. So if we expect to have our sins forgiven, the wicked rebellion and treason that we continuously commit against God, in our hearts, in our minds, in our words, in our actions, then how can we turn around and hold singular sins against people? Somebody does something wrong and sins against you, does you a wrong, and you hold that grudge, you hold that bitterness, you hold that offense. That how could you expect Christ to forgive you? And then the positive, so that's the negative aspect of it. The positive aspect is that it's for your it shows your glory to let that go. So and this is one of those conundrums where if you do it for that reason, it kind of steals from it. Like you don't want to forgive simply to glorify yourself, to be pompous, to say, "Ooh, look at me, I'm merciful, I'm gracious." That's a sin in itself. That takes away from the whole thing. But if there's just a desire to forgive, a desire to be merciful, a desire to be gracious, a desire to be Christ-like, to just let things go, then from that, there's a radiant glory that's going to come from that. People are going to see Christ-like character in you. It's going to be visible. Glory is visible. So it's a glorious thing. And then the other one here, the beginning of that verse, discretion of a man. The discretion, I think, is like it's a prudence. It's a hiding. It's almost a covering. So the discretion of a man deferreth his anger, like a wise, prudent, thoughtful understanding of a situation, being slow to anger, considering the situation, and discretion, hiding the offense, defers anger, gets rid of the anger. So it's so much better to let that, like bitterness and unforgiveness. Your bitterness and your offense isn't doing anything to the person that you're angry at. They're going about their day completely unaware of that. All it's doing is eating you up. It's causing you to be angry, causing you to have a bad day, causing you to be frustrated. And it's wicked. It's wicked no matter what they've done to you, no matter what offense, because you've done worse to the king. And you've done worse in your heart. And usually the thing you're angry about is something you've done yourself. You've acted that way. You're mad because somebody has slandered you. You've slandered people. You've done that. So you just got to let things go. We're gonna wrong each other. We're children. And we're foolish. We're sinful. We're stuck in these sinful bodies. We're going to do things to each other that are selfish and wrong and hurtful and mean-spirited and wicked. But we're all going to do that. We're all in the same boat. I can't hold that against you if I want Christ to forgive me. I can't hold that against you if I want peace and contentment in my own heart, if I want to be free from that poisonous root of bitterness. Verse 12, the king's wrath is as the roaring of a lion, but his favor is as dew upon the grass. A foolish son is the calamity of his father, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dropping. So I'm single, so that's one of those verses that I can't really speak experientially, but it's there's numerous proverbs that warn against this. The contentious wife, the contentious spouse, the angry, bitter, and it says here the contentions of a wife are a continual dropping. So an angry, contentious, bitter wife is going to bring that bitterness upon you continually. It's going to rain down upon you, so to speak, with that contentious behavior, with that anger, with that bitterness, over and over and over, and it's just going to wear a man down. And that's why the scriptures tell us, to avoid that type of woman. As a biblical man seeking a godly wife, you're looking for those holy, righteous principles that exist within her. A quiet and gentle and loving demeanor, a gentle spirit, the scriptures talk about it in several places. So I mean, you need to study the scriptures yourself and then realize that beauty is vain, that charm is deceitful, that flattery is wicked, that those things go away. So if you're just searching for beauty, if you're looking at the externals, and you trap yourself in the lust of the flesh, thinking, "Ooh, I want that," and you end up with an ungodly, contentious, bitter wife, it's going to be the scriptures say in another proverb here, it's better to dwell in the wilderness, or to hide in the attic, so to speak, than to live with a contentious and brawling woman. It's a miserable life to have somebody that's going to fight with you all the time, that's going to be contentious and angry and bitter all the time. You want, and this doesn't just apply to men, that a woman wants a godly man too, not a man who's going to be violent and angry and bitter and vicious and bring out all of his frustration on her. A man should be gentle and kind and compassionate and caring with his wife, and his wife ought to be gentle and kind and compassionate and just all the things that are the opposite of contentious. So if you get trapped in that lust, if you get trapped in the allure of beauty and end up settling for a woman who's contentious and angry, you're going to have a life of misery. You're coming into that marriage, it's going to be just ruinous. It's going to destroy you. And it's a continual dropping. It's nonstop. It's cold rain pouring down upon you day after day after day after day. Just not good. But that was verse 13. I think I'll stop there. Lord willing, we'll pick up in verse 14 next time. All right. I love you guys. We'll talk to you later. Hey, everyone. We're continuing on in Proverbs Chapter 19. We read through verse 13, so we're going to pick up in verse 14. It says, "Houses and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord." This is one of those verses that I've often used in ministering to others, and also to myself as well, with the idea. I hang out with a lot of young brethren, and a lot of them have recently gotten married or are getting married, and so there's just a lot of focus, and I'm sure any of you that have young brethren know that the young are often very, very focused on finding a spouse. It's like the predominant thought in their minds, and so this verse often comes up as the idea that a prudent wife, which again, when looking at the Proverbs, every good characteristic I take to mean the saved, the born again. Every negative characteristic is referring to the lost. So all throughout the Proverbs, we're getting a comparison between the two kingdoms, the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness, and how those within the kingdom act and how those without the kingdom act. So you get this constant comparison in the Proverbs of how the born again are and how the lost are. So in this case, you have a prudent wife, so that'd be referring to a born-again woman. A prudent would be like wise discretion, which comes with righteousness. All these good characteristics that are mentioned in the Proverbs are developed through the righteousness of Christ in us. Like it's part of our sanctification. We grow into these things. We become prudent and wise and diligent and kind and forgiving. All these good characteristics mentioned are developed in us. So the prudent wife is a born-again wife, a godly wife, a Proverbs 31 wife, where you get a detailed description of a godly wife. And it says that a prudent wife is from the Lord, in the same way that inheritances are from a father. And so the idea there to me is like that you don't hunt for a spouse. Like the whole concept of dating is kind of a secular idea. It's foreign to biblical Christianity. It's not something you see in the scriptures. A man isn't like shopping for a wife, testing different models, so to speak, which is what dating is. It's you're testing out different people to see, is this one fit for me? And in the meantime, you're probably partaking in some sort of romantic activities. So that's adulterous, even if you don't go as far as sex. Like I'm sure you're lusting in your heart. So there's a sexual connotation, which again is why I think dating is wrong. The biblical way is to wait for a godly wife. A prudent wife is from the Lord. In the same way that you receive an inheritance, you would receive a wife. It's not something you hunt for. It's something that's given to you. God will bring a godly wife into your life. And then there's a period of courtship. Once you encounter her and you see this is a godly woman that I have an attraction to, then you begin a courtship process where it's not dating, it's more of an interview process where you're examining each other's lives to see, is this person truly born again? Is this person worthy of the vocation they've been called into? Is this person going to help me in my walk of holiness? Is this person going to increase my faith? Is this person going to be a helpmate? And so you go through that process. And then the whole idea of engagement, like I think that's a pretty secular idea too. Like I don't see the point in that. Why delay? Once you know this is a godly person that the Lord has brought into my life and there's an attraction, then just go ahead and get married. Because a prudent wife is from the Lord. It's something that's given to you. And vice versa, that would apply to a woman as well. A wise, godly husband is from the Lord. It's a gift. He's going to bring you together. Another idea that I've often thought about is like, how did Adam find a wife? He didn't go hunt for a wife. He fell asleep and woke up and God had brought him one. And I've seen that in my life. I've seen godly women come into some of my brother's lives, and there you go. Anyways, we'll move on here. Verse 15, slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. Just another common theme throughout the Proverbs here, just a caution against laziness and not being diligent. Verse 16, he that keepeth the commandment keepeth his own soul, but he that despiseth his ways shall die. He that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord, and that which he hath given will he pay him again. So there's a verse that we have to be careful with. The prosperity type people might take that out of context and focus on the second half where it says, what you give, you'll receive, that will pay him again. And so like it's tricky, because the prosperity people will focus on that, and that becomes the heart of why they give. That becomes the heart of why they tithe or give to the poor, because they're expecting to get something in return. And so it's greed hidden behind a veil of piety. It's a religious act, but at the heart, it's really just greed. It's selfishness. It's a desire to have and to have an increase. And so, sorry about that. When you see verses like that, you have to be careful that that doesn't become your motive. We don't give to get. You have pity upon the poor because it's the right thing to do. And then the Lord's just saying here, in essence, he'll take care of you. But anyways, I had a phone call coming in here, so I got to take that. We'll wrap up here on verse 17. I love you guys. We'll talk to you later. Hey, everybody. We're continuing on in Proverbs Chapter 19. We read through verse 17, so we're going to pick up here in 18. It says, chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. That ought to be a rebuke against parents who don't believe in spanking, who are opposed to that. They think it's cruel. It's specifically, there's another verse that talks about don't spare the rod. So that's how you chasten your children. And it says not to spare for their crying. Just because they're crying, you shouldn't feel bad for that. It's when the rod is done in a corrective fashion, you're driving foolishness out of the heart of a child. A timeout or taking toys from them, that's not going to do it. It's that severe chastisement, again, done in correction, not out of anger, but in loving correction, to let a child know this is the way that you should not go. This is the path of destruction. And so to relent from that, because of some idea of pity or compassion because of their crying, it's not pity or compassion. It's actually like a form of cowardice, a form of weakness, and it's a form of disobedience to the word. The word calls you to do that as a parent, unless you hate your child and you just want to let them go off into destruction, because the ways of foolishness lead to death. And so if you're just going to let them persist in that, if you're not going to follow the biblical prescription for discipline, then you're showing that you really don't care about that child's soul. You're allowing a weakness in you to put their soul at risk. So you should chasten them while there is hope. Discipline your children. Again, with loving correction, not with anger. If it's not out of anger and bitterness and vengeance and like just flying off the handle, then it's wrong. Then there's no point to it. But if it's a corrective discipline, it's a good, beneficial, and holy thing. Verse 19, a man of great wrath shall suffer punishment, for if thou deliver him, yet thou must do it again. So again, that's about sparing, but this is in the case of adults. If you spare somebody the punishment that's due to them, the lesson's not going to be learned, and they're going to do it again. I suppose you see that a lot with drug addicts and people like family members habitually supporting them and letting them take advantage of them. And not letting them go and hit rock bottom. They're sparing them from that rock bottom, but they're just prolonging the demise. The person's not going to learn the lesson unless they're allowed to carry that out to their destruction. We have to reap what we sow. There has to be an evidence of discipline. There has to be an evidence that this action will lead to destruction, or this action will lead to pain, this action will lead to suffering. If you deliver them from that, if you spare them from the consequences of their actions, the lesson's not going to be learned, and they're going to continue down that path repeatedly. And so it's not just with a child, it's with any foolish person, or in this case a man of great wrath, it says. Verse 20, hear counsel and receive instruction, that thou mayest be wise in thy later end. So that's just about listening, to being attentive. In the later end, I would assume that this is then referring to a youth. Like, youthful people should really heed this counsel and learn while they're young. Pay attention. And again, that's something that's common that you hear in society. I wish I would have listened to my parents. It's when we're young and foolish, we don't pay attention to the advice being given to us. We don't pay attention to the wisdom being offered to us. But if we did, then we're going to glean that wisdom much earlier and avoid the consequences of life and life's decisions. If we would heed the advice of our elders, if we would listen to wise counsel, especially if you have godly people in your life who have biblical wisdom and have the real knowledge, real substance to their wisdom. It's not just worldly, earthly counsel. It's biblical, factual truth. You really want to cling to those words. You want to heed those words. There's that old saying, like, people who say, well, that people have to experience things to learn. Well, no, experience isn't the only way to learn. You can learn from other people's experience. That's wisdom, to heed the counsel of others. Verse 21, there are many devices in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the counsel of the Lord, that shall stand. To me, I see sovereignty there. I see that. I was just talking about this with the brothers the other day, about how a lot of people seem to be unable to trace back thoughts and motives and actions to first cause. Like, thoughts don't spontaneously generate within us. They come from somewhere. If they're evil thoughts, they come from the flesh or from the world or from demonic. If it's a good thought, it comes from God. All good things come down from the Father of lights, the scriptures say. So there's a first cause that determines why we think what we think, why we act the way we act. Because if you take your action and you say, okay, why did I do that? What was the thought process behind that? What led to that action? You're going to see, okay, there was a desire. I desired to do that. Okay, why did I desire that? And that's going to come back to probably a thought. You weighed out the thought. You contemplated the benefits, the fleshly impulse, the desires. Okay, well, where did those come from? And you trace them back, you're going to find, okay, it either sprung from my evil heart, in which case the grace of God was removed and I was allowed to go down that path for wise and holy and beneficial purposes. Or if it's a good thing, that because no good thing dwells in us. There is no good thing in our own flesh. Nothing good comes from us. You can't just have a spontaneous generated thought of good coming from an evil heart. That's not the way it works. All good things come down from the Father of light. So if my action is good, then the thought behind it, the desire behind it was good, the motive behind it was good, and the original first cause thought was good, which means it comes from God. So God is the source of all good. Whereas if I'm left to myself, if God doesn't intervene, I'm going to do evil. And so the idea there that the counsel of the Lord will stand while I'm contemplating things, the Lord's holy eternal purposes will take place. That's the sovereignty of God. What He has determined to take place is going to take place, whether He leaves me to my destruction. And because I'm a Christian, I know that it's for my good. He's bringing an ultimate good out of that. There's a holy, wise, good counsel behind that. So if He leaves me to my sin, he's just what it was talking about earlier with physical, with chastening a son or showing the consequences of actions. There's some wise, holy purpose behind allowing me to go that way. And if it's good, it's coming from Him. He has put the desire in my heart. He has put the path before me so that He gets all the glory. Either way, His counsel is going to stand. I'm going to do what God has determined to be done in His wise and holy purposes. So there's sovereignty behind this verse. There's a sovereignty behind our actions, behind our thoughts and desires and counsels and motives, and there's a sovereign hand behind that. I think I'll stop with that. That's a pretty heavy thought, so I'll just let you chew on that. And then, Lord willing, we'll pick up in verse 22 next time. All right, I love you guys. Talk to you later. Hey, everyone. We're continuing on in Proverbs Chapter 19. We read through verse 21, so we're going to pick up in verse 22. It says, the desire of a man is his kindness, and a poor man is better than a liar. It's a confusing verse there. The desire of a man is his kindness. Not understanding what that means there. The desire, that's your motives, your drives, the like the seat of the heart, what causes you to act. So the desire of a man is his kindness. What? It's a perplexing verse there. The desire of a man is his kindness. And a poor man is better than a liar. What a tricky verse there. It just seems out of step with what is normally said about these qualities. Like the desires of a man's heart are usually referred to as evil, as wicked, unless they're controlled and directed by the Lord. And what does being poor have to do with a liar? Why the comparison there? A poor man's better than a liar. I suppose that last half makes a little bit more sense to me, because a lot of times riches are gained through lying. There's another verse that talks about how the talk of the lips leads to pennies or something like that. So it's that part makes a little bit more sense, but that beginning part is kind of confusing to me. I guess that's something I'd have to study out further, or if you guys have any insights on what that's referring to, feel free to comment. I turn the comments off when I'm doing the live video, but I'll look at them afterwards. The fear of the Lord tendeth to life, and he that hath it shall abide satisfied. He shall not be visited with evil. So, again, that's a common theme throughout the scriptures, especially here in Proverbs, the fear of the Lord, and how the fear of the Lord is a pure thing. It's a good thing. It's a reverent holding back from wickedness. I heard one brother describe it as being in a room of nuclear, like a nuclear reactor or nuclear power, and there's a line on the floor that says, "Do not cross this line." Like, you understand the power, you understand the radiation, the risk that is involved if you were to step beyond that line. And so it is with the fear of the Lord, the fear of God, the fear of his justice and his righteousness and his holiness and his all-seeing scope. Like you're not going to get away with anything. He sees all, and he's just. He's going to hold people accountable. So that fear, that reverent fear, protects us. And here it's saying that tends to life, because the opposite of death is life. Not crossing that line keeps you in the path of life. A slothful man hideth his hand in his bosom, and will not so much as bring it to his mouth again. Just for the sake of transparency, I recognize that verse, because I tend to be a pretty lazy person, and I've been so exhausted and so lazy before that I don't even want to move. So, like, I know what it's talking about. The slothful man puts his hand in his bosom, will not so much as bring it to his mouth again. It's like a chore just to raise your hand. Like, sometimes, like, just out of laziness, you don't want to move. So I understand that verse quite a bit, and that's a wicked thing. Like, laziness is probably natural in a lot of us, and it's the easy way, but like, to overcome that, to recognize it as something that's not good, because the scriptures tell us over and over again to be diligent, to work hard. There's good qualities in those things as opposed to the bad qualities of laziness. So we have to overcome our natural disposition towards laziness. Verse 25, smite a scorner, and the simple will beware, and reprove one that hath understanding, and he will understand knowledge. That touches back on a verse that we read previously about chastening your child. And other verses like the rod is for a fool's back. Smite a scorner, like the punishment of the wicked, in a public atmosphere. And I suppose that's why they used to do public executions, because it puts fear into the simple here. It says that those that just aren't thinking deeply about consequences and stuff, when they see the consequences, when they see a scorner smited, when they see punishment, it causes them to hesitate. It causes them to go, whoa, probably don't want to go down that path. And then vice versa, it says, reprove one that hath understanding. Reprove is to correct. A person who has understanding, it with biblical knowledge, biblical wisdom, desires truth. Like, they're not interested in anything else. They just want what's true. They want what's right. They want what's good. And so if they're wrong and you bring a correction, they receive it, and they gain that knowledge. They'll understand. They appreciate a rebuke. They appreciate a correction. Whereas a fool doesn't. A fool just wants to do their own thing. They want to go down their own path. They don't want to be told they're wrong. They don't want to be corrected. They just want to continue doing what they want to do. And so they'll hate correction and hate reproof, and lash out at it. But a man of understanding, and even like we've discussed before, like how sometimes your pride will cause you to initially reject a rebuke. But then a wise person goes home and sits and thinks about it, and it says, was there any truth in that? Am I in the wrong here? And so they'll examine themselves, and if they're wrong, they'll accept that, and they'll come back and say, look, I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. I was in error. I didn't see it at first. I'm sorry. So wisdom is looking for correction. Wisdom is constantly seeking out truth. And it recognizes that if you're wrong, you're usually blind to that wrongness, unless you're willfully deceitful. But most of the time, you're just blind to it. You don't see that you're wrong. You're unaware. And so you need correction. You need people from the outside. And that's why the scriptures talk about multitude of counselors in wisdom, and why we're continually studying the scriptures to examine our own hearts to see where we are in error and where we need to be corrected. That's wisdom. That's a good quality. Verse 26, he that wasteth his father and chaseth away his mother is a son that causeth shame and bringeth reproach. Not really sure what it means by waste your father and chase away your mother, but you can sense by the context here it's a negative connotation. So you're doing something negative to your parents. There's some form of disobedience or rebellion against your parents. And so that's a son that causes shame and brings reproach. It's again another common theme throughout the scriptures. As a matter of fact, it's in the 10 Commandments to honor your parents. And disobedience to parents in the Old Testament was punishable by death. So your parents are looking out for your best interest. They want what's best for you. And so it's wise to consider what they have to say and to be obedient to them. And it's commanded by the Lord. So I think I'll stop there. That was verse 26. Lord willing, we'll pick up in 27 next time, and we should be able to finish out the chapter. All right, I love you guys. We'll talk to you next time. Hey, everyone. We're continuing on in Proverbs Chapter 19. We read through verse 26 last time, so we're going to pick up here in verse 27. It says, cease, my son, to hear the instruction that causeth to err from the words of knowledge. That might be one of the wisest pieces of advice that, excuse me, that a person can be offered. The New Testament puts it this way. It says, evil company corrupts good habits. So, and Psalms says that we're not to sit with the scorner, or to walk in his ways, or to run with the ungodly. I forget exactly how it says it in Psalm 1. But it's great wisdom because, like, we are the light of the world. Like, we've become light because of Christ. We've become righteousness. We've become goodness. And what part hath light with darkness? What part hath Christ with Belial? It says in another place. Like you can't be around ungodliness without it rubbing off on you. And unfortunately, that's a hard lesson some of us have to learn. Like I remember when I first got saved, I thought that I could go back around my old friends and be a light. I thought, well, I'll just go be a witness. I'll just go back to this old path and live differently. I'll just be a light around them. But I quickly learned that you can't be around that kind of behavior on a consistent basis without it rubbing off on you. It's the old oil and water. We are pure water. The world is oil. You can't mix them together and attempt to clean the oil. All you're going to do is dirty the water. Now there is a distinction, because people will say, well, Jesus sat with the sinners and Jesus ate with the sinful. Yes, but for evangelistic purposes. He wasn't hanging out with them to hang out with them. He wasn't having a good time with the lost. He wasn't socializing and making friends with the world. He was attempting to teach them. So there's a difference. We go into the lost world to evangelize. We go to minister. But we're not a part of that world. We don't associate with it. You can't sit and be friends with it and have a jolly old good time with that. It just doesn't work. So this is, to hear the instruction, that's to sit and listen to wickedness that will cause you to err. You will dirty the water. You will pick up those habits. It's been said that the 5 people you hang out with the most, you adopt their habits, their mannerisms, their language. You become that, and so if you're surrounding yourself with wickedness, if you're surrounding yourself with the perverse, with the drunken, with those that are given to party lifestyle, with the sexually perverse or adulterous or fornicators, those habits, those ideas are going to wear off on you. You're going to hear those things, and it's going to cause you to err from the path of wisdom. So we're told to avoid that, to stay away from that, to surround yourself with the wise, with the godly, with the just. Because then you're going to develop wisdom. You're going to pick up on their habits and their ideas, and you're going to walk in their paths. Verse 28: an ungodly witness scorneth judgment, and the mouth of the wicked devoureth iniquity. Judgments are prepared for scorners, and stripes for the back of fools. So that's just saying like that. That's what judgment and punishment is for. It's prepared for. Romans 13 talks about how authority doesn't bear the sword in vain. It's to punish evildoers. That's the purpose of punishment. That's the reason it's there. So anyways, short video here. That actually wraps up chapter 19. So Lord willing, we'll pick up in chapter 20 next time. All right, I love you guys. We'll talk to you later.